Welcome to the Manchester University Students' Union Election Results Night, hosted by students from the Manchester Media Group. I'm Maisie Woodford, Station Manager for the Manchester student radio station, Fuse FM.
And hi, I'm Frankie Golding. I'm a member of the student TV station, Fuse TV. After intense campaigning and voting period, the students have spoken, and a total of 6,573 students have voted in this year's election. We will be live for the next hour, bringing you the results of the NUS Delegate Elections, the Vote of No Confidence referendum, and ending with the 2021 Student Exec Officer Elections.
Throughout the night, students from Fuse FM, Fuse TV and the Mancunian will be discussing the results, as well as some of the major student issues that have been highlighted throughout the election and voting period.
First up, we have the results of the NUS Delegate Elections. 8 candidates stood for the election for NUS Delegate, representing the University of Manchester and the National Union of Students Conference this April. Your candidates were Kiamaka Anoliofo, Anaf Rahman, Athena Ma, Maznuna Chowdhury, Malik El Assar, Shoaib, Yanying Liu, Afra Faryin, and reopened nominations.
A total of 3,075 students voted in this election. There are a maximum of 12 delegate places available. The votes are as follows. Chiamaka received 701 votes. Ahnaf received 327 votes. Athena received 136 votes. Maznuna received 214 votes. Malak received 522 votes. Shuaib received 326 votes. Yanjing received 260 votes. Afra received 302 votes. All candidates have been duly elected as NUS delegates. The Mancunian's Asiya Fayal recently interviewed the NUS President Larissa Kennedy about her role and the action-packed year students have had so far. You can read the full interview on the Mancunian's website.
It's now time for the result that you lot have all been waiting to hear, the Vote of No Confidence referendum. At the start of semester 2, campaigners were granted the right to a referendum from the 8th to the 11th of March, following a series of controversies surrounding the university's handling of the pandemic this academic year. This vote is the first of its kind in the university's history, and asks students if they wish to declare that they no longer have confidence in the Vice-Chancellor and her senior management team. Named university leaders are Deputy Vice-Chancellor Luke Giorgio, Registrar, Secretary and CEO Patrick Hackett, Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Teaching, Learning and Students April McMahon, and Director for Student Experience Simon Merry-West. If the vote goes against Dame Rothwell, the result is non-binding, but will have to be considered by the university's Board of Governors.
During this election period, we put the following question to an all-student vote. Do you agree with the following statement? This student body has no confidence in Vice-Chancellor Nancy Rothwell and other university leaders. Students were able to answer yes to agree, no to disagree, or to abstain from the referendum. Referenda require a quorum of 400 voters. Any votes to abstain are not included in this quorum. So if the simple number of yes or no votes exceeds 400, this referendum will be valid. We then require a simple majority, and whichever option receives the most votes wins.
In this referendum, we received 5,619 votes. 477 votes were cast for abstain, meaning this referendum is valid. 555 votes were cast for no, and 4,590 votes were cast for yes. This means that with an 89% majority, we have confirmed that this student body has no confidence in Vice-Chancellor Nancy Rothwell and other university leaders. Let's head over to the student media team to see what they make of this result.
So there you go, guys. As we heard there, the student body has revealed that they have no confidence in Nancy Rothwell and her senior leadership team. I'm going to go to Lucy first with this one. Lucy, what do you think of this result?
I think students made the right choice. I think that it's been a long time coming, and I think that what remains to be seen is whether Nancy Rothwell respects the huge vote, over 80%, of students who voted her out. I hope that she respects the students' views, and I hope that she resigns and is replaced by someone who actually cares about students and won't make the mistakes that she's made, as she has done since September.
Thanks for that, Lucy. Pippa, what do you think on that? And do you agree or disagree with Lucy's comments there?
Yeah, I completely agree with Lucy. I think the vote speaks for itself. Students are feeling disappointed. They feel let down. And I hope that the changes are made to give students a better leadership team, which we can rely on.
Thanks, Pippa, for that one. Joe, I'm going to go to you next. What do you think this actually means for the university? I mean, we know that it's, not a legally binding contract. They don't have to actually follow it. What do you think will happen now?
I think there's going to be a lot of pressure, both from the student body and the wider public and media, on the Board of Governors to either remove Nancy Rothwell or for her to resign of her own accord alongside the senior leadership team, because I think it's a very definitive vote that students have no confidence in her. I think, especially among the kind of undergrad and first year population of Fallowfield, there's been very much an us versus them mentality that's developed. And I think that she's been obviously the target of a lot of it, but I think after this referendum, if she refuses to go, then that's only going to possibly worsen. And I think there will be a lot of national pressure and all eyes will be on the University of Manchester. So I think it's a very kind of important turning point in the student movement and student politics in general.
Thanks, Joe. And I'm finally going to bring in Prasham there. What do you think of all this? What do you make of it? And, do you think it was expected tonight?
I personally think that Nancy Rothwell was a very talented individual. She's been very unlucky with the pandemic. Like, it's not her mistake that the pandemic has come in, but her management and how she has responded to the pandemic, that hasn't been the best. In the previous years, the University of Manchester ranking has gone up. In lots of people have ranked University of Manchester higher than it was previously ranked. And as an international student, that's one of the reasons I chose the University of Manchester. But again, her response to the pandemic has not been the best. And as you can see by the vote, that most of the people in the University of Manchester think that she should be replaced. And I just think that the next person who comes in has more ideas on how to deal with the pandemic and how to recover after the pandemic once everything reopens again.
Thanks, guys, for that. So as you've seen there, the student body has voted unanimously to vote out Nancy Rothwell. We're going to head back now to Maisie and Frankie with the rest of the results.
It is time now for the results of the Students' Union Executive Officer Elections. This evening, we will be announcing the results of the following roles in this order: Liberation and Access Officer, Women's Officer, International Students Officer, Activities and Development Officer, Welfare and Community Officer, and General Secretary. The roles of Education Officer and Postgraduate Officer will not be announced today, as they are pending the conclusion of ongoing investigations.
We use a single transferable vote in our elections. This means that when students cast their vote, they list candidates in order of preference, voting their favourite students, candidate number 1, their second favourite, number 2, and so on. When we run the results for these elections, candidates must receive over a 50% plus 1 of the votes cast. We call this the threshold. We will count the votes in rounds, reading the first preference votes, then the second preference votes, and then so on. If no candidate reaches this threshold in the first round, we will eliminate this candidate with the lowest votes. Their votes will be redistributed and we will move on to the second round. We will continue in rounds until one candidate has reached this threshold.
Our first Executive Officer election is for the Liberation and Access Officer. This officer is responsible for supporting liberation, faith and cultural groups to widen participation to university and eliminate barriers and forms of discrimination. Your candidates were Kieran Brierley, Leanne Gray, Christopher Meadowcroft, Emily Bennett, Michael Turner, and reopen nominations. The total number of votes cast for this position was 2,566. Our threshold in the first round is 1,283.
In the first round of voting, reopen nominations received 213 votes. Kieran received 559 votes, Leanne received 664 votes, Christopher received 200 votes, Emily received 737 votes, and Michael received 119 votes. After the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Michael will therefore be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll move on to the second round.
By the second round of voting, our new threshold is 1,230. Reopen nominations received 215 votes, Kieran received 586 votes, Leanne received 684 votes, Christopher received 215 votes, Emily received 759 votes. After the round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopen nominations and Christopher will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the third round.
By the third round of voting, our new threshold is 1,061. Kieran received 615 votes, Leanne received 713 votes, Emily received 794 votes. So after the third round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Kieran will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and they will now move on to the fourth round. By the fourth round of voting, our new threshold is 860. Leanne has received 806 votes, Emily has received 914 votes. This means that Emily has passed the threshold and is duly elected the Liberation and Access Officer for 2021 to 2022. It was an incredibly close race by the looks of it. Let's head over to the student media team to see what they thought about these results.
Yes, there are some really strong candidates there. Congratulations to Emily. So Emily has experience working with university management. She was previously a Halls JCR president. And Emily's campaign proposal was really inclusive in covering a whole range of issues, one of which was her promise to advocate for minority groups. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on that, guys. Let's start with Lucy.
Yeah, I think it's a really promising manifesto from Emily. I know that she promised to advocate for a similar thing to the Black Students' Welfare Policy for other ethnic minorities, and has promised to advocate for disabled students in terms of sort of accessible and affordable housing, as well as, she wants to include sanitary products for all people, regardless of gender, all around the university. And what's exciting for me is that she opposes Prevent, which is a government strategy that ends up targeting sort of Muslims more than anyone else. Is a counter-terrorism strategy that often ends up, making Muslim students at risk of persecution from the government. So I'm really excited by her manifesto, and I look forward to see how she works with the other candidates and the other executive officers to sort of implement what she said she will.
Yes, definitely a really strong campaign which covered a lot. So what are your thoughts on it, Tom?
Yeah, it does. It covers a great scope of things, I'd say, in my opinion. And being from myself, being from a working class background, I do like the idea that Emily's put forward for better access to online university resources, which, is needed because we've been thrust into this pandemic, with little notice, and not everyone can access things online. I think for an example would be that the fact that our national broadcaster, the BBC, had to do online learning for children. Not everyone has access to these kind of online things. And that goes hand in hand with another thing that Emily's proposed, which is encouraging the uni to support students struggling through what they've called, which is named really, the hidden costs of university, which is really true. I mean, you go to university, you think you're paying your tuition fees, obviously, and then you also pay your rent. But it doesn't end there. You need to pay for food, you need to pay for clothes to wear, you need to pay for university books, which can be sometimes, extremely expensive just to sit your course. And if you haven't got the book, you can't do the course. So those kind of things, I think, are such a great thing to bring in. And I mean, it's the name, isn't it? Liberation and access. It's giving those people the access that they deserve and that they need.
Yes, I think following from that, her idea of the accommodation cap for disabled students who will obviously have to pay a lot more for accommodation, which is more expensive, to introduce that cap to be able to support those students is also really important. So we're going to head back over to Maisie and Frankie now to hear the results of the Women's Officer, but thanks for that, guys.
We'll now move on to the election of the Women's Officer. This officer works on projects and campaigns about gender equality and women's issues in academia and wider society, helping to create a student environment free from sexism and discrimination. Your candidates were Katie Donnelly-Hunn, Jaffa Cake, Jazz Taylor, India Seymour Lewis, Jasmine Hewitt, and reopened nominations.
The total number of votes cast for this position was 2,622. Our threshold in the first round is 1,311. In the first round of voting, reopened nominations received 136 votes. Katie received 215 votes. Jaffa Cake received 711 votes. Jazz received 979 votes. India received 392 votes. Jasmine received 189 votes. After the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopened nominations will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the second round.
By the second round of voting, our new threshold is 1,246. Katie received 215 votes. Jaffa Cake received 715 votes. Jazz received 979 votes. India received 393 votes. Jasmine received 189 votes. So after the second round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold yet. So Jasmine will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll move on to the third round.
By the third round of voting, our new threshold is 1,181. Got there in the end. Katie received 222 votes. Jaffa Cake received 726 votes. Jazz received 1,003 votes. India received 411 votes. After the third round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. India and Katie will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the fourth round.
So back to round 4, our new voting threshold is 989. Jaffa Cake has received 795 votes and Jazz has received 1,182 votes. This means that Jazz Taylor has passed the threshold and is duly elected the Women's Officer for 2021 to 2022. Let's head back to the team to hear what they have to say about this result.
So there's a pretty big win for Jazz Taylor, and I think as Women's Officer, I'm sure she'll do a fantastic job. But I suppose what we should probably talk about in terms of women's safety is Jazz's experience as an officer representing students, but also experience running Reclaim the Night. So I just wanted to ask you, Pippa, what you thought about, especially given the current climate around women coming forward with feeling unsafe in the streets and that kind of thing. What you thought about Jazz's manifesto and the promises she's made in terms of the women on campus.
Yeah, so I think especially in light of the Sarah Everard case at the moment, women are feeling increasingly, and we always have been feeling unsafe walking around at night. And I think looking over Jazz's campaign, the self-defense element that she wanted to implement did really appeal to me, being able to defend myself. It's a sad reality that we live in a society where we feel we need to take self-defense classes to be safe. Another aspect I thought was the night out initiatives working with local bars. A lot of harassment happens to everyone in nightclubs. If you're a woman, it's just a standard part of the night. So those proactive measures to keep women safe were really appealing and make her a very strong candidate, which is one of the reasons why she's won.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's fantastic to see the sort of promises she's made and who she advocates for. And in terms of Reclaim the Night, just wanted to do a quick plug. Although the in-person march can't go ahead this year because of obvious reasons, there will be a series of online events taking place through the SU next week from the 15th to the 19th of March. And I suppose we should move on to the next result.
We'll move on to the election of the International Students Officer. This officer supports and represents the university's international student population and works to support and facilitate the integration of home and international students. Your candidates were Saadia Tasnim, Joanna Cawley, Sampreet K. Rangaswamy, Raskas Soe Mantoro, Kavya Pabisetti, and reopened nominations.
Let's pull up the graph again. The total number of votes cast for this position was 2,385. Our threshold in the first round is 1,193. In the first round of voting, reopen nominations received 211 votes. Sadia received 425 votes. Jana received 808 votes. Sanpreet received 172 votes. Raskia received 263 votes. And Katya received 506 votes. So after the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Sanpreet will be eliminated and their votes redistributed. And we'll now move on to the second round.
By the second round of voting, our new threshold is 1,135. Reopen nominations received 213 votes. Sadia received 433 votes. Joanna received 819 votes. Raska received 276 votes. Kavya received 528 votes. After the second round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopen nominations will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the third round.
By the third round of voting, our new threshold is 1,030. Sadia received 435 votes. Jana received 820 votes. Raska received 276 votes. And Kavya received 529 votes. So after the third round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Raska will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll move on to the fourth round. So by the fourth round of voting, our new threshold is 943. Sadia received 455 votes, Jana received 852 votes, and Kavya received 578 votes. So after the fourth round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold again. Sadia will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll now move on to the fifth round.
By the fifth round of voting, our new threshold is 772. Joanna received 923 votes. Kavya received 621 votes. This means that Joanna has passed the threshold and is duly elected International Students Officer for 2020-2022. Back to the media team to hear their thoughts on the results.
So guys, it kind of gets to that time of the night where it's almost comedic how long this can go on for. I know Frankie and Maisie's faces there were finally hoping to get to the end to release that result, but that was there that Joanna had won that position. Now, Joanna's manifesto includes a variety of things to do with international students, obviously, but even just the small things of engaging more with international students to address their concerns, which you'd think, you know, was standard, but it's been included in the manifesto because she clearly cares so much about making that happen. And no pressure, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think about Joanna winning this position, and what includes in her manifesto that you really think, you know, gets people?
I think her manifesto is really great, but what was more better was her campaign. I've personally worked with Kavya, the other candidate, before, and I really liked her manifesto more. And I think she had more in a manifesto than Joanna. Joanna's manifesto is great. I think she can achieve everything she mentioned on the manifesto. That's a good thing. But I would like if she could consider working more towards the scholarship side, more scholarships for international students, and if she could work more on getting part-time jobs for international students.
Thanks, Presham. I'm going to go to Jo now. She spoke about engaging more with more societies to make university more of an inclusive experience, as well as advocating for more diverse staff, especially from BAME backgrounds. However, something we did discuss was that for international students, Brexit has caused quite an issue, and it wasn't mentioned in Joanna's manifesto. What do you think about that?
I think that it's interesting she didn't mention Brexit. I think that might be to do with we're all feeling a bit of Brexit fatigue after the past couple of years, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Brexit does affect and impact international students. I know it already is. And so how she engages with the wider international students body and works with the university and students union and even wider powers like the council. So I think that will be interesting to see. Then in terms of diversity, I think it's a very important kind of issue to pick up on, especially I'm pretty sure she mentions about more diverse staff as well. I think that's increasing diversity at UOM is very important. I think it will be something interesting to see how she actually goes about it and how she pressures the university leadership to do it, especially as the leaders are now in uncertain times. So think it's going to be very interesting moving forward to see what happens.
Yeah, and quickly just before we go, I'm going to get Prasham just to talk about this thing a minute. She has said that she wants to raise the profile of social inclusion of international students. What do you think she means by that for starters? Do you think that needs to happen? And do you think it'll help in the long run?
Can you repeat your question, please?
So Joanna mentioned that she wants to raise the profile of social inclusion for international students. Do you think what do you think will come of this come the new year?
It's a fact that over the last few years, international students, and especially during the pandemic, international students have been less included because a lot of them are either not on campus, or if they're on campus, it's very difficult for them to make friends. And if you see in the long run, the goal of the University of Manchester, like if you come over here, is to make more international friends, to work in that international crowd, to get that international experience. So I think that will go a long way in benefiting personally, for personal growth, and for the university as well.
Thanks, guys, for that. Now we're going to go back to Frankie and to Maisie.
Thanks, Tom. We're now going to move on to the election of the Activities and Development Officer. This officer shapes the activities programme available to students and champion participation in activities, including societies and volunteering. Your candidates were Peter Leslie, Liam Harry McCabe, Oscar Thorpe, Christian Sayas, Camilla Florencia Rasail, and reopen nominations.
The total number of votes cast for this position was 2,921. Our threshold in the first round is 1,461. In the first round of voting, reopen nominations received 145 votes, Peter received 636 votes, Liam received 125 votes, Oscar received 896 votes, Christian received 222 votes, Camilla received 897 votes. After the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Liam will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the second round.
So by the second round of voting, our new voting threshold is 1,431. Reopen nominations received 145 votes. Peter has received 647 votes. Oscar has received 904 votes. Christian, 228 votes. And Camilla, 938 votes. So after the second round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopen nominations and Christian will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll now move on to the third round.
By the third round of voting, our new threshold is 1,284. Peter received 674 votes, Oscar received 916 votes, Camilla received 978 votes. After the third round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Peter will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the fourth round.
So by the fourth round of voting, our new threshold is 1,035 votes. Oscar has received 975 votes and Camilla has received 1,095 votes. This means that Camilla has passed the threshold and is duly elected the Activities and Development Officer for 2021 to 2022. We'll now head back over to the student media team again to hear what they have to say on this result.
Yes, congratulations to Camilla there. So across the activities and development campaigns, we saw a big emphasis on sports. Prasham, I'd be curious to hear why you think this is.
So sports make a very big part of the university experience. Lately, we've seen a lot of emphasis on mental health and how it can be improved, and sports is a big way to do that. Personally, I feel that sports helps a long way in keeping you strong, fresh, and focused. And that's why I feel that that emphasis on sports is much needed if you want to win this, especially the elections for activities and development officer.
Yeah, so Lucy, what do you think are some of the strengths of Camilla's campaign?
I think that she's had a very sort of adept campaign. I think she's known what she's doing sort of throughout the beginning. She's got a lot of experience with social media and marketing and that kind of thing. So I think that came into her campaign, and I'm excited to see where her where she takes us, and if she can continue along the lines of a manifesto.
Yeah, so this role is typically linked to sustainability and environmental issues. Josh, do you feel that this has been sort of prominent in the campaigns this year?
Not quite as in sort of previous years. I think the pandemic has kind of overshadowed everything, but students are always going to be keen to hear about sustainability and environmental issues. That's always going to be the case, and it always will be the case. So it's fantastic that Camilla's choosing to sort of champion that, and I'm sure that going forward she'll be putting that at the kind of heart of her agenda. And of course, it's good for us at the Mancunian to see one of our own being elected.
Yes, so we'll now head back over to Maisie and Frankie for the next result.
Next up is the Welfare and Community Officer. This officer directs the work of the union's welfare policy and activity. Welfare issues often make the difference between students succeeding in education or not, whether through having affordable transport, decent accommodation, or adequate financial provision. Your candidates were Fritha, Heaven, Sebastio Rodriguez, Lamis Anyan, Charlotte Smith, Sorsha Juba, and reopen nominations.
Here are the results on the graph. The total number of votes cast for this position was 3,430. Our threshold in the first round is 1,715. In the first round of voting, reopen nominations received 171 votes. Fritha received 919 votes. Sebastio received 625 votes. Lamis received 284 votes. Charlotte received 873 votes. Saoirse received 558 votes. After the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopen nominations and Lamis will be eliminated. The votes were redistributed, and we will move on to the second round.
So by the second round of voting, our new threshold is 1,534. Fritha received 935 votes, Sebastio received 657 votes, Charlotte received 898 votes, and Saoirse received 578 votes. So after the second round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Saoirse will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll now move on to the third round.
By the third round of voting, our new threshold is 1,323. Fritha received 975 votes, Sebastio received 717 votes, Charlotte received 953 votes. After the third round of voting, no candidates have yet reached the threshold. Sebastio will be eliminated, their votes are redistributed, and we will move on to the fourth round.
So by the fourth round, Maisie, our new threshold is 1,063. Fritha received 1,076 votes and Charlotte has received 1,050 votes. This means that Fritha has passed the threshold and is duly elected Welfare and Community Officer for 2021 to 2022. It's now time to head back to the student media team to hear their thoughts on the result for the Welfare and Community Officer role.
So that was a bit of a nail-biting result to watch, but yeah, Fritha Heaven won. She's a supporter of Nancy Out. She's a long-time activist, even before Corona, and has a wealth of experience, specifically in student activism. She's been involved in 3 successful occupations in the last year, including the occupation of Owens Park Tower. So I just wanted to hear what sort of our the other panelists had to say about student activists, someone who's been involved on the ground since the very beginning, about sort of their win essentially. So I'll come to you first, Joe, because you are a first year and you do live right in the middle of it.
Yeah, so I think having an activist as welfare officer will be very important for a lot of first years, because there's obviously been a lot of controversy about the university's handling of welfare. I mean, obviously we had the unfortunate case of a student who died in Halls, and also that honestly disgraceful infographic the university posted back in January telling students to treat lockdown as a retreat and watch socks folding videos to relax. So I think having someone is very key in terms of all the students' movement, influencing the kind of welfare policies, will hopefully lead to a lot of reform and avoid some of the mistakes, hopefully, that has been made these past few months. So yeah, I think it's a very positive thing that Fritha has been elected welfare officer.
Yeah, I agree. She's also involved and an ardent supporter of things like Black Lives Matter, of decolonise the university and of the BDS movement. And she also actively pushes for climate justice on campus, such as, the decarbonisation of campus, like a lot of the other candidates. So I'd like to sort of hear from, I suppose, Josh and then Tom on what you think about sustainability and equality and decolonisation of the campus. Josh, would you like to?
Yeah, I think it kind of the whole night, every result this evening has been quite remarkable, and I think we've basked in a golden age of student activism over the last year, and I can only see that getting stronger going forward with the Nancy result and with the new exec team that we've got. I think that students are going to be really fought for, and students' voices are going to be heard. And if I was on the senior leadership team right now, I'd probably be quite worried of this new, fresh exec officers with fresh ideas, ready to put the world to rights and put students at the heart of what they're doing. So I look forward to seeing if next year and the next academic year will be an extension of the tumultuous semester or 2 semesters that we've had so far.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And just quickly, Tom, what do you think about how Fritha has promised to really stand up for students and really, take student issues right to the top of the management, whoever the new management might be?
Yeah, I mean, just before I get to that, Lucy, I've just seen the comments coming through on our social media platforms. I would, on behalf of everyone, like to apologise if anyone, was didn't feel comfortable when we were talking about something that was aforementioned there. And I understand that some people appreciate trigger warnings for that. So we do apologise if anyone felt that way when that was discussed. But back to your point, Lucy, I think, yeah, it is kind of not to use the term woke, because I really don't like the use of the term. But I think now it's, those kind of things have to happen. Like, we can't continue the way we are with using inefficient tools that are going to just kill our planet. Like, we physically cannot do that. We physically need to do something for that to change. And even in things like decolonising the curriculum, I think now is time that we start to, understand that and to, put things in action that make other people feel appreciated and they don't feel subjected, that when they're learning, they don't feel as though they don't feel the way that they have expressed their feelings. I wouldn't want to put a word on how those people feel, but that kind of needs to happen now, I think. And it's great, I think, that for the support to all these matters, and hopefully we can get those into the SU.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great result not just for Fritha, but for students, for someone who's going to fight for students, as have all the candidates been so far. And I think we'll move on now to the result everyone's been waiting for, which is Gen Sec, isn't it?
Thanks, guys, and I hope everyone's okay. I had a kind of cartoonish screen coming at one point, so just checking in. We're finally on our last result of the night. We're on to the election of the you're right, Frankie, of the General Secretary. The Gen Sec is the figurehead of our Students' Union, who chairs the trustee board, oversees the general running of the SU, and is the lead representative to the university. Your candidates were Ella Vincenti, Anish Banerjee, Nikita Mutreja, Malak Elisar, Ahad Omer, Ben McGowan, Melody Stephen, and reopen nominations.
Here's the graph, and the total number of votes cast for this position was 3,285. Our threshold is therefore 1,643. So in the first round of voting, reopen nominations received 135 votes. Ella received 639 votes, Anish received 233 votes, Nikita with 300 votes, Malak with 274 votes, Ahad with 332 votes, Ben with 644 votes, and Melody with 728 votes. So after the first round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Reopen nominations will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will now move on to the second round.
By the second round of voting, our new threshold is 1,581. Ella received 641 votes, Anish received 234 votes, Nikita received 303 votes, Malak received 274 votes, Ben received 647 votes. Oh, I think I skipped Ahad, I'm very sorry. Ahad received 334 votes, Melody received 729 votes. After the second round of voting, no candidates have yet reached the thresholds. Anish will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we are going to move on to the third round.
So by the third round of voting, our new threshold is now 1,503. So Ella has received 655 votes, Nikita has received 320 votes, Malak has received 284 votes, Ahad has received 345 votes, Ben has received 655 votes, and Melody has received 746 votes. So after the third round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold, Malak will be eliminated, their votes will be distributed, and we'll now move on to the fourth round.
By the fourth round of voting, our new threshold is 1,390. Ella received 665 votes, Nikita received 333 votes, Ahad received 360 votes, Ben received 663 votes, Melody received 758 votes. After the fourth round of voting, no candidates reached the threshold. Shock. Nikita will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we will move on to the fifth round.
So welcome to round 5, guys. I know you're all on the edge of your seats. Our new threshold is 1,284. So Ella has received 703 votes, Ahad received 390 votes, Ben has received 680 votes, and Melody with 795 votes. So after the fifth round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Ahad will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we'll now move on to the sixth round.
By the sixth round of voting, our new threshold is 1,146. Ella received 748 votes, Ben received 708 votes, Melody received 836 votes. After the sixth round of voting, no candidates have reached the threshold. Ben will be eliminated, their votes redistributed, and we're moving on to the seventh round.
So guys, it's a 7th round of voting. Whoa. So our new threshold is 892 votes. Ella has received 856 votes, but Melody has received 927 votes. This means that Melody has passed the threshold and is duly elected General Secretary for 2021 and 2022, the Executive Officer team. So for the final time, let's head to the student media team to hear their thoughts on the Gen Sec election and the new exec team as a whole.
So there we go. We managed to make it there, if everyone's still with me. We finally got to the end after a lot of rounds of voting. So there we go. That's it. They are the results that we've got this evening. So first, obviously, we're going to talk about Melody first, because obviously that's the results we've just got in there. And I think I'm going to go to Lucy first. The Melody, is a bit of a fact for you there, had the backing of the Nigerian Society. And then the Nigerian Society proved quite high on the society leaderboards in voting. Do you think this had an impact on her vote? And as well, what do you think of the overall position, Lucy?
Well, I imagine that it's a big society, the Nigerian Society. So I imagine that their endorsement would have had a big impact. And it's great to see that a society's endorsement really can make a difference. And obviously I'm assuming that it did, but it's great to see that people come out in full force to support the people their society endorse, which proves that there's not exactly a level of alienation or anything like that. People are involved and want to hear about who their society thinks they should vote for, and I think it's a big win for Melody. I also wanted to point out that she endorses the Nancy Out campaign, as do almost all of the winners, which is great to see. So I think it's a victory for students rather than just the candidates. It's overall a bit of a victory for students, and I just hope that a lovely new General Secretary can fulfill her promises, and we'll listen to student activists, we'll listen to the rent strike and 9K for What and all those groups, and implement the changes that students really, really need to see in the university.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lucy. Now, Melody's also backing the decolonisation of the curriculum, which is also being backed by Frida Heaven and Emily Bennett. She's also said that she wants to remove the annual BAME report and replace this with the breakdown of each ethnic group separately, to allow true representation. Josh, what do you think on this? And do you think this will be a positive move for the university when this transparent diversity comes into place?
Well, GenSec's the biggie, isn't it? And if you've got other people on the executive team who are also sort of talking about similar initiatives, such as, decolonising the curriculum and really sort of talking about representation properly, then it seems that it's going to be a formidable team, and they're definitely going to be able to get things done. Removing the BAME report and replacing it with separate ethnic groups, that sounds quite sensible to me. There are lots of very different characteristics and different features within each of those groups, and I think if we're going to really look after students and target support properly, we need to know what each different group of students needs and what students feel that they want to see in their academic career. So I think that actually that sounds very sensible, and with all the other people on the exec team now supporting this similar initiative, it could mean it gets done.
Yeah, thanks for that on that one, Josh. Now, she's also Emily's also mentioned things about pandemic plans and post-pandemic plans. Obviously, we don't know what the current situation will be come September. For her pandemic plan, she's wants to implement a technology fund at the university, as well as saying that students should be reimbursed for unused accommodation. Because of that, I'm going to come to you, Joe, with you being in first year. What do you make of this? And she also said that first year students should receive more support to deal with the lack of sociability.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of her campaign promises. I think there should definitely be reimbursements for unused accommodation, because, I mean, it's only right. We've been paying, some people have been paying for rooms they've never even been in, or if they have been in, they've been vacant for months or weeks. So I think that's the impetus should be on the university to reimburse and draw up new payment plans in terms of those students who haven't been able to actually take advantage of having a room in halls. And also on the lack of sociability, I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, I'd be interested to know how she would go about that and what her further details for it are. But I do know, as a first year myself, a kind of lack of socializing and inability to meet really people who you don't live with has been a very difficult thing. And I think as we leave lockdown, I think there definitely needs to be more support for first years, because we've kind of been thrown in at the deep end. Yeah, we've kind of adjusted to online learning, but I mean, people won't know their way around campus. They won't really know, they might not know the regular spots in Manchester for going out. So I think there definitely needs to be a view of the student union to taking care of first years as we kind of re-emerge from the thralls of COVID.
Thanks for that one, Joe. And then moving to her post-pandemic plans, Melody said wants to lobby for the university to keep the current mitigating circumstances and extension guidelines after all students are back, which, to be fair, is allow room for those who might struggle with adjustments or coming back to university or have other issues going on in their life at the time. I'm going to go to Prasham on this one. What do you think of this? And she's also said that student bursaries should be available for accommodation, as many students and their parents will have unfortunately found themselves with added financial burdens even after the pandemic.
I think that's really great and helpful, and it's going to benefit a big population of the University of Manchester students. And this is something because of which students might even choose the University of Manchester as compared to other universities. Her promises are great, and I think if she's implementing these, it's going to be really difficult. But I think if she's going to be able to work on it, it's going to be really great.
Thanks, Prasham. And there's a final part of the of Melody's manifesto, which I'm going to bring Pippa on. And just for anyone at home, this is a trigger warning. This part of the conversation will include topics of sexual abuse. So if you missed that, this is a trigger warning that we will be talking about topics about sexual abuse here. Melody's covering this in her manifesto, and I think you and Lucy both spoke about it earlier in the programme, Pippa, when we was talking about the women's officer. But Melody's included some of the following things in her manifesto, where she says that the university needs to take more ownership of the part they play in their to reduce sexual violence across all campuses. She's actually suggested a way to do this would be upgrading the UOM app, so any students who feel in danger can click on a distress button, which will send an alert to nearby authorities. And finally, this again contains a trigger warning for sexual abuse. She said there should be an extra feature button on the counselling website to report a rape. So Pippa, what do you make of that in the light of this week, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's a shame to say that these are actually really good policy ideas to have in place. I think particularly having the featured button on the counselling website to report a rape. Obviously, unfortunately, a lot of rape does take place whilst people are at university, and I think anything that can be done to make reporting that process easier should be put in place. I think Melody's really captured that in her manifesto.
Thanks for that, Pippa. And quickly before we go, guys, going to put you a little bit on the spot here, but if you could sum up this year's executive in one sentence, that would be great. So Lucy, I'm going to go to you first.
I suppose a new executive A, it's fantastic to see so many women and non-binary people have won, and I just hope that they can achieve their manifesto. So I suppose one word summary would be hope.
Josh?
I think the university are going to be shaking in their boots.
Good one, man. Joe?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of change, and yeah, it's going to be exciting times.
Prashant, what do you think?
I don't have one word, but the fact that the whole board still now is women, and the pandemic, we've seen that women-led countries have performed better. I think in the future, University of Manchester is going to perform much better than the other universities over here.
Thanks. And finally, Pippa, to you.
Yeah, I think the whole committee have shed a lot of light on student voices who have been misrepresented and underrepresented, and hopefully those changes will be put in place so that it can be a better place for everyone.
Yeah, I think there's definitely two things we can take away from that, and that is hope and change. Now, that's all from us on the student media team. We're now going to go back to everyone's favourite duo. It's back to Frankie and Maisie.
All right, guys, so we're coming to the end of our broadcast today. So this is your executive officers team for 2021 to 2022. So just to reiterate, we've got Melody Stephen for your General Secretary, Frida Heaven for your Welfare and Community Officer, Camilla Florence Rasile as your Activities and Development Officer, Joanna Corley as your International Students Officer, Jazz Taylor is your Women's Officer, and Emily Bennett is your Liberation and Access Officer.
This year has been a historical elections period with the university's first ever vote of no confidence in senior leadership and a great voter turnout for exec elections, despite a fully only voting period. Online only? A bit of a typo, it's fine, due to the pandemic. Hopefully we're at the start of a bright future and some positive changes at the University of Manchester. Thank you to all the students who had their say this past week. Thanks for voting, and thank you for tuning in to the Manchester Media Group's coverage of the SU election results.
Bye.